Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor Brains V Brawn II. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here to talk about episode 12. We are halfway through the season. Strange episode. We'll talk about it. A lot to get into with the bubbles of the recap, bitches. It is the great Mike Bloom. Mike, thank you for being here.
Yeah, you know what? I will absolutely cop to that. I think I without slandering these other two, bring the most unbridled joy
Than
amongst the
anyone in
three
the
of
world.
us. And Shannon, excited to tear into this like Petey's bicep.
Yes. Okay. Firstly, I use that intro as a segue because it's like I'm severed and I go into the podcast and I'm like it's a second later, but actually a second after finishing the Puya podcast. The last thing we did was talk about which of the Powerpuff Girls each of you would be, and I said I would be Professor X, and then the podcast ended and I went. It's not Professor X.
It's
Professor
Professor
Utonium.
Utonium,
It's
who
Chemical
used
X.
Chemical X. Yeah.
Professor X is from the X-Men, and I thought, oh boy. And now that podcast hasn't yet dropped in the timeline we're in, but the messages I'm going to get, like, I feel bad for future me, and I deserve it. Like, as much as those people were screaming at their phone, like, you can't hate me more than I hate myself. And I'm so glad we podcast every freaking day because then I can immediately clarify. But I just want everyone to know I haven't even received your messages yet. You don't even know how badly I'm about to screw that up. And I already have clocked it and rectified it. And I hate myself. Okay. We can
Oh
talk about
no.
Survivor, but I just think that's so much more important. I'm so glad that I got it done. And
I
whatever
mean,
mistakes I make on this podcast, I will rectify on the following podcast tomorrow. Okay.
yeah,
That's what
listen,
we'll do.
we're like any sort of basic news cable show, like you issue corrections on the next episode. I mean, as much as we want to talk Survivor, now this has my mind in a tizzy thinking about like, okay, if Professor X was Professor Utonium, and this is really going down a rabbit hole, Shannon, I might lose you. Like the Powerpuff Girls might actually be the original Weapon X. Like the Wolverine was factory designed with an adamantium skeleton. The Powerpuff Girls might have been like in line with those types of artificially created models of mutants rather than mutants that just were born genetically.
Exactly. It does make sense. But it's the fact that, like, literally, it's just the severance of it all where I'm like, I end the podcast with being like, I'm Professor X. I then am severed to be normal Shannon, who's not doing Australian Survivor. And then a second later, I press back in this world and I severed Shannon comes back and I'm like, it's not Professor X. And I'm just right back on the same thought. So that's where we're at, Mike.
And it's a good thing that Petey's tendon isn't severed from his bicep.
Well, yesterday Puya said that the brains are severed, and look, obviously the show everyone's watching at the moment is Severance. Let's talk about it
About
because
severance? Okay, I've got thoughts.
I've got a great pun on Kaylin, right?
Okay. This really
but-
is the severance state of you being like, all right, memo to myself, I do have a pun about Kaylin. Wait until the next day when we have to deal with a possible medevac and an impromptu questionable quit to bring in my ace Kaylin pun to really bring the whole thing home.
No, because it's PD related, and I think the fact that PD doesn't get medevac means this can still be funny. Because what I was gonna say is they should call him K-Olin if he keeps knocking people out of the game.
Or
is that
killing.
too harsh? You're killing. Poor Kaylin. Like, at what point? This is a real question to have. At what point do they start asking questions? Like, 2 is unfortunate. 3, you start thinking, is this a strategy? Like, at 3, he at least is not allowed to wrestle. And obviously, this is the end of the pre-merge, but like maybe we stop wrestling altogether. And at 4, I think they say, you're the problem. It's you, and they remove him from the game. I think 4 is the number where they're like, I think you're doing this on purpose. Imagine he's like crying. He's so upset. He's like literally,
I know.
He's
like
pure goodness. But imagine if it cuts him in confessional and he's like laughing maniacally and like that was his strategy.
I mean, listen, we talk about how people in the island really question the morality of a challenge throw and whether or not that is with their character. Kaylin would be regarded as Satan incarnate if anyone found out that he was purposely breaking the bones of his competitors.
Look, I'm not one for the integrity of it all, but that's against the rules. That would actually be cheating and causing bodily harm and putting the show in jeopardy given the lawsuit.
I don't know, but I mean, what I would say is like, let's use attack zone logic here from that iconic challenge in Survivor Thailand. Like, well, you told me to get the ring by any means necessary. Like, it just so happened to fall in there. I do agree that I think what makes this a bit lighter is not only the fact that PD is okay for the time being, but the fact that it couldn't have happened to seemingly a nicer guy. Like, this is far and away amongst an incredibly chaotic, messy, dramatic cast. Like, the most lawfully good stable force of the entire season, yet he has the most proverbial blood on his hands between everything that happened with Zen, which you can more so blame the net with Zen. This time, like, there were no suspect safety standards. I guess just the lack of any safety was a safety standard in and of itself. But like, God, I felt so visceral is a word to describe a lot with this scene. And Kaylin just like being reverted to sobs, feeling so guilty about it, absolutely broke me. Again, unlike PD's bicep, which I guess it's okay. It's on the men. We call this, Shannon, in the Survivor historian parlance, we call this pulling it a Jim Lynch, that he tore his bicep, but not completely from the bone.
Well, thank God for medical immunity, because you don't ever want someone to be medically evacuated ever. It means we need another Nautilum. It's also just really sad. And God forbid we had someone pull out of the game in this episode. So 2 would have been incredibly upsetting, which we can talk about. But yeah, in the wrestling of it all, I think AJ makes a lot of sense that he was like, I'm just going to give it up. It's like, yeah, protect your body in these wrestling challenges is actually like a pretty important strategy going forward.
Now, what's interesting though, is if he was in BVB1, he would have become even more persona non grata. That you gave up in the wrestling challenge. Look what Petey put on the line, AJ.
Well,
you only need one hand to hold a set of cards.
He was immediately vindicated, I think, in the fact that like Petey had a really bad, and then they just go right back to the challenge, which they're like, but don't do that.
Hey, everybody, be careful out there. All right, game on. Let's get into it. Like,
it's true.
Expecting these people to self-police. I mean, I guess I think that's valid, because after seeing what happened to Petey, and like, good Lord, that snap is gonna live in my head more than Thanos. Of like, just I think the editor who made that scene should either be promoted or demoted. I can't either decide with just how much they amplified that noise to make it me visibly cringe. And then to have everyone be like, shit, I don't want that to be me. It kind of is actually a way to have them back off. You don't need to necessarily put up guardrails. They're going to put them up themselves by not wanting to become PD.
Well, I think that guy should be promoted, because I'm pretty sure it's Andrew who listens to the podcast. Great job, Andrew. It might have been, what's it called when they did this in The Amazing Race, when they add a sound to it and it's not the actual sound.
Foley.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It might have been that.
Could have been Dan Foley showing up.
Yeah, look, it didn't. I
think Dan Foley would actually get along with some of the guys that are on this season.
I was gonna say, I thought like, okay, well, it's fine. They don't have to wonder like, should we be changing all the wrestling challenges because it's the end of the pre-merge? But then it's like they did just send them right back into doing the wrestling challenge, so maybe that wouldn't have been the thing.
Rub some dirt on it.
Yeah, before we move on, I do have to apologize to Kaolin in my list of things. You know, I talk for 6 hours a week, and sometimes I say the wrong thing, or sometimes I get something wrong, and then people tell me, which is fair, because again, you can't hate me more than I hate myself. Everyone's being very, very nice. No one's being mean about it. But yeah, 2 nights ago, we were harsh on Kaylin. Chappelle and I still give him a Chizzy point, but we were harsh because we thought that he had revealed to Paulie that he was the primary split. But a lot of people have pointed out, while some of Twitter dragged him, that if you rewatch that, which I did many, many times now, I had rewatched it, but now that I've had a careful lens on it, it seems AJ actually gives more of the Paulie votes, and it seems that Paulie didn't seem to really understand what AJ was saying, but he says 3 Paulies at least, and then Kaylin is like, no, that's wrong. Like, when he says 4 Paulie votes, he's saying, no, you said that wrong. He was actually rectifying AJ's mistake.
He's saying, you're counting. That's 4 Paulie votes.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, you said that. He's not saying you said that in the past. He's saying you said 4 now, and that's wrong. He was rectifying it, and we dragged him. If anything, Kaylin is the light of the season. He's not purposefully hurting anyone. He's actually getting the splits correct. But the editors are painting him as, I think they were meaning to paint him as silly, and I fell for it, and Chappelle fell for it, and I apologize because he was rectifying it. And I actually do think Kaylin is a really big part of the game going forward, which we'll talk about. But yes, he is like the even keeled, you know, mass injuries aside and possible strategy of hurting people aside, he is really like the stable force of the season. So I just want to apologize, because it does seem that he was actually, if you rewatch it again, it's kind of like a optical illusion, where like now if you rewatch it with what, it could be both, but if you rewatch it now with what I'm saying, where he's rectifying it, you're like, oh, that is right.
Yeah, it's like when you watch a sound clip get played, and like if you read the subtitle sentences and they're different, you would read them back. Are you just saying this, Shannon, because you fear that if you continue to drag Kaylin, he might cause you bodily harm?
Fine, please don't hurt me, Kaolin. No, I'm joking. Poor Kaylin, literally a goodness in this world. But let's talk about it, because look, I was looking at the time. I don't want either AJ or what seemed like it would be Paulie to go, to be honest. And I'm like, they're not going to go because look at how late it is for the challenge. And I really thought we were going to get to tribal council and PD was going to get pulled, to be honest. I didn't see Ben coming.
Especially when they sit down, I thought it was going to be... No, that would have been weird, though, because I don't think they would have shown PD being like, I'm right as rain, good to go. And then 10 minutes later have them say, yeah, actually, you know what? We took a look at his x-rays. They were upside down. We do need to pull him.
Well, it's not 10 minutes. It's hours later, and it's him being at camp in that environment where he's maybe like, you're not pulling me, but I don't think I can do this. You know, like it's going to be tricky. It's going to be like...
I do only have one arm.
Yeah, exactly. So it might have been like, this is a bad idea, actually.
I will say I would say one of the biggest things that's keeping him in the game is the fact that he is a soccer coach. If he was like a handball coach, this would be a bean-wen situation, right? Of like, this could risk my career. He's like, I use my feet. I don't need one arm for the time being. I can deal without it for multiple months at a time.
Well, okay, we've made a lot of jokes in an actually serious situation. I'm really glad he didn't get pulled. Yes. Because it's so sad, and also because then we would need another non-elim, right? And we still, because of Zen, need another non-elim for a final 2 or 2 for a final 3. So we can't have PD getting pulled.
I mean, Shannon, I do not think we're out of the woods with this.
With PD?
Yeah.
You don't think you can do it with one arm?
I mean, what I am reminded of is what happened to Matthew in Survivor 44, where like he fell off the rocks and technically he was cleared and he made it another, 10 days. And then it basically, the malnutrition and the elements just got to him because suffice it to say, if you want a muscle to heal, you probably shouldn't be starving out on a desert island. So I could see a point in the post-merge where like, essentially he's going to get given an ultimatum. Maybe it'll become like a meta quit of production basically saying like, you can hang around here, but the fact of the matter is like, you're not going to get any better. And so I think it's fine for the time being. And I think honestly, PD's, chances of staying are totally fine as well. I do not see a reason to target him in the individual game at the moment. And so I also think, and we'll get to this as well with what happened with Ben, Australian Survivor really does like to listen. People will get purple from time to time, regardless of how they go out. But I think certainly they're quits and medevacs. There, with a couple of exceptions, Zen I think was actually a bit of an exception.
Yeah, shocking.
But otherwise, they pretty much try to like make anyone who leaves the game through unconventional circumstances as quiet as possible because we don't want it to. And Nina, I guess, is another great example as well of like they don't want to necessarily though highlight this person in a huge light only to yank him out of the spotlight. But like, oh, well, then they weren't voted out. So I think that, I don't know, maybe we'll get more PD stuff now that, maybe one of his closest allies is gone and he has this thing that he's working against, but I'm still, checking his medical records to see if there's a possible dark prognosis here.
Well, what do you think PD was like particularly electric and the reason we're not hearing from him is because he's going to get pulled one day? Like that might just be PD. I mean, I don't know enough to be honest.
You can't spell pulled without PD. That's all I'm saying.
Well, look, it saved Paulie here and not him, Ben. I'm going to say that if it happens to PD, God forbid, in the future, I hope it's just like the vote. I hope not that they vote him out, but it's just like he's getting back to the end of hopefully a Monday night episode. No offense, Priya, but like the shorter episode, because even this was really unfortunate because this was like a boring episode. The vote itself was boring, which we'll talk about. The vote itself was going to be on Paulie. Luckily,
we prevented, the most stale vote of what has been a very fresh pre-merge.
Yeah, on a character that is bringing a lot. Where the intrigue was, should we split on AJ for no reason? Will he go home to an idol that the audience knows doesn't exist? There wasn't a lot of intrigue there. So for a Tuesday night, this was a lot to, not have a vote as well, like 2 nights in a row with the non-elim yesterday, even though I thought episode 11 was really fun and I thought it was a really interesting non-elim.
Which I believe is the first in AU history, I think. I don't think we've ever had nights with two episodes in a row consecutively where there were no votes to eliminate or nobody gets their torch snuffed at the end of it.
But even with that, I'm really glad that just Ben left and we also didn't get a vote because then we need another non-elim. It's like, okay, we got a vote tonight, a boring vote. We lost Paulie. Like, what would that have achieved? This is yes, this episode wasn't great and we don't have a vote and we haven't had a vote since Sunday night. But it's just like the podcast. If something goes wrong, you just pick it up on the next one. We'll see it in a couple of days. So for me, that's fine. Let's get to the elephant in the room. It was weird. It was really weird. We don't know what happened. I'm not going to speculate because I have nothing to go on. it was very much like Poochie died on the way back to his home planet. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was bizarre. It has to be pointed out, but that's all I have. It was strange AF, and we'll just truck on to the next episode because I got nothing, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, this seems like an absolute addendum to the point of how it was edited as well. I mean, to your point, Shannon, we did not see anything from Ben, period, but also in terms of content, like with all the previous departures like this of this nature, if that is to be assumed as to why he possibly left, we had seen some sort of moments alluding to why they did this. This has to be like one of the most sudden departures I have ever seen on Survivor. Of like, oh, by the way, this guy on the other tribe went. So I also, I don't know, did they have to have a running lease at Tribal Council where the deal is they have to show up at the end of every episode? Because they literally walked in, he kept them there for 2 minutes to say, you actually don't need to be here. Bye. I feel like in previous episodes, like when Sue Hawk walked out of All Stars, they just got a piece of tree mail that said Tribal Council is canceled. I guess they still wanted the kind of like pomp and circumstance of bringing him in, but I don't know if I was the new Brawn tribe. If I was Paulie, I'd be elated, but if everyone else, I'd be like, A, Paulie's in the game, and B, like, I am deprived of calories, and you made me schlep my stuff all the way to Tribal Council, sit down for barely 3 minutes, get told that someone else is gone, and then go home again. It was just a very odd ending. And to your point, I do not think it is within our right to speculate. We have seen people leave the game for a number of reasons, whether it be their own sort of emotional distress, whether it be like we saw with Lee in All Stars, maybe something going on at home, maybe it's another reason entirely. I know that's not going to stop the internet from speculating, but what I would say is like, try not to unless details come out, if they do at all. And I don't want this to necessarily sound to the detriment of Ben and whatever he had going on. To your point, does prevent a rather rote outcome and does invite this rather chaotic element of Paulie into the post-merge, where he might easily be discarded and go out in 13th place, but that's at least a little bit better than what if we had, one of the many of this amorphous blob of brawn get to the merge. Could be a very different game from there on out.
Is it too late to go back and make the joke that the tribal could have been a tree mail? Okay,
yes!
I think it still works. I mean, in terms of speculating, which we're not, like, it might be in line with how Ben wants the story to be told or whatever was happening there or whoever's involved. So I think that's important to think about as well. I think that from a brawn perspective, we lose a brawn for a brawn, an eye for an eye. And a bicep for a bicep, no, and or it was going to be PD. Like, anyway, it was going to be a brawn male. If anything,
was this not like Final Destination where it was always going to be a brawn male, and you have just like this invisible Grim Reaper trying to go through all of them?
Yes, as often the Final Destination ghost of a movie I've never seen and will never see has been massive this season. But for brawn itself, I mean, Paulie's definitely a great shield. He's as much of a number as Ben was, and he probably has a little bit. I don't know. We didn't see a lot of Ben because he's going to get randomly pulled, but I do think that Paulie seems to like bring some utility to brawn as much as at least as a shield. So for them, it doesn't change the structure of the show. And for us as viewers, I do think we win out keeping Paulie in the game here. And it's not even like we miss like an incredibly interesting vote because let's talk about it. Even the vote itself is going to be like the most boring vote of the season, where it becomes about like, I mean, Karen is not doing well hiding her AJ disdain at all, and she needs to be doing a lot better.
Really, from our perspective, he walks into the conversation with Zara and she immediately walks away. Like, could not be any less subtle about the fact that she is pissed off beyond belief at him. And listen, we'll set this up going forward for the post-merge. I really do feel like this is going to be a narrative that is dominated by the graduates, considering that they don't have the majority, but with a couple of people on their side, they certainly do. This is the biggest crack in that possible alliance. Is at this point, Karen is just done. And it's so interesting to see the Zara-Karen dynamic because it's equivalent to like, sometimes, I'll spend like all day with Asher doing a bunch of stuff. And I love the kid, but sometimes he drives me up the wall. And like, I will drop him off with Angela. Asher. And like, she's refreshed from it. She's like, okay, yeah, I can sort of take this on at the moment because I've sort of had the time away to recharge, everything like that. This kind of feels like Karen and Zara, where Karen's like, you take him. I'm done with him at this point. And Zara's like, what has AJ done? What's going on, everybody? Give me the deets.
Well, to be fair, the way that AJ came back with Zara, given that Zara was the target of the hostage plan, often I do wonder if he was like, I thought you guys would win. I was gonna pass an idol. I've always thought that'll never be verified. That's not been a part of the show, but it's just a storyline I've created in my mind. But he came back with Zara pretty well. But I definitely do agree that. But the thing is, that's not good from Karen. You can't cut him now. I understand. Paulie is kind of as sketchy, but not even a possible numbering going forward with these slim technical Brains Brawn majority or vice versa based on how this vote goes. So you do obviously want to keep AJ, but just why spook him? Just spook him later when you cut him. I think that just work with him now or cut him, but don't cut him. It's one or the other. And I think do a 1 vote split from a Logan who definitely doesn't care about her social relationship with AJ to protect against a Paulie idol and him doing something crazy and not taking out the person everyone else wants to take out, although he has been really good at splitting the majority on their terms and cozying up to them, sure. That's not ill-advised. But just splitting it to split, I mean, there's so many issues. Why do that to AJ? There's nothing there. They probably weren't going to do it. But even in doing that, he's trying to bring over a 4 on Logan, which isn't going to happen. But if you're splitting your votes, then he only really needs a 3 on a 3-2-2. Why even open yourself up to that? It was silly. It was silly and it was nothing. This episode didn't have a lot. Well, it had, to be fair, 3 advantages and the pasta reward, which we can talk about. But the vote itself, we didn't lose a lot in missing this vote.
Well, I think this episode focused really finely for me on what one of the themes of this season is besides Brain versus Brawn 2, which I think is this idea of how emotions and our innate way that we feel about people can drive what we do. That's what I think is fundamentally the core of a lot of decisions that are being made in this season. And what is so interesting is how this contrasts against someone like AJ, right? Who is I would say by the book, but the book is infinite jest in that it is just so complex and twisty and confusing and you don't know what the next page is going to bring. But I think a lot of the disconnect occurs because he is making decisions without necessarily thinking about how his allies and enemies will respond from a human perspective. And I think that's what Karen's speaking from. And that's what she's feeling right now, quite literally, is that the decision that she's making, which is to quote unquote, put the fear of God into Paulie. She even acknowledges, or to AJ, sorry, is to not, make a big move. It is just to troll him a little bit. It's to say hey, I can do, it's almost like what Russell did with Parvati, a little bit of you played this idol that I didn't know about, so I'm going to get rid of Danielle. Again, it's not that extreme, again, because it's not.
That was terrible.
Exactly. But I think it's her more so saying I want you to know that you are not as in control of my game as you think. Now that said,
it's very petty and
it's petty AF. It is petty AF. And from an entertainment perspective, I love it because Karen is the best in my opinion when she is fired up. I think she is very fun with just how feisty she can be. But I do, and also the fun irony, right, that one of AJ's biggest detractors at this point is actually his closest ally that was spent the entire game with him. But this is an absolutely awful thing to do because if your plan is I'm gonna spook AJ, what do you think? If your problem is that AJ is putting his fingers in too many pies, what do you think he's going to do when he's scared? This does not seem like a guy who's going to fall in line. He's going to double down even harder. He's going to start making alliances with the trees, with JLP, with PD's non-torn bicep. He will absolutely turn everything up to overdrive if he thinks that there is something going on. That's why when you have these sort of people like a Natalie and a John Mish, for example, that is you think you're with me, but one day I'm going to get you. She didn't randomly throw out votes for John when Alec or when Reed was going, she waited for the proper moment to catch him flat-footed. That's the tactical thing to do. It does not overwrite the fact that from a TV perspective, it is a lot of fun. And to your point, maybe it contributed the only quote unquote intrigue to this, because I do not think these people would have cooked it at all. I don't think we would have had another person flop their vote over to make it a 4-3 in the other direction, but would have been
just a 3-4 is a mistake. Yes,
exactly. But we'll see if this is something that will also make its way back to AJ as well. I guess the only people that would communicate to him would be Logan, who has her own axe to grind and then some with AJ.
Well, we don't know what we don't know what they were going to do. I don't know that they were going to. I think it's just something you talk about. I don't think it's something they were necessarily going to do because it is so silly and petty and ill-advised. But I think, yeah, we see the way that AJ responds to any kind of threat. Today it's like he's like, okay, at first he's like, I pushed it far, so I'll be the split. And then he's talking to Kaylin. He's like, we vote for Logan. I guess just on like Paulie's idol hitting and him having an AJ vote, 2 votes for Logan makes sense. Kaylin won't do it. Kaylin's been riding the middle very well. He's also like, you can blame it on me, but it's like, but you would also need a vote that way. How would 2 votes anyway? But he immediately it's like, I'll be the split. I have to like basically take my medicine. Then he's like, I actually don't like medicine. And I think
wait. So he would want. If AJ is saying that he wants him and Kaylin to vote, or is he saying, Kaylin, you vote, I won't. I'll still vote for Paulie, but I'll say it was me.
Well, look, that is the way that AJ has operated in the past. We've seen with Rich, but that doesn't make numerical sense because at that point, if Paulie plays an idol,
then he could just vote for Logan if he wants
to. And that wouldn't make sense because it would be an AJ Logan tie, and AJ would assumedly go home. It needs to be 2 votes. I didn't understand that part of it, but that's the plan that makes sense. So I think I always just tend to. Yeah. That's what he must have meant in conversations that are like taken out of context, but
it could be just something where it's like he's like, oh well, I whispered it to Kaylin at tribal council. Maybe that's what he meant, but like I'll take the blame. Like I was pulling a Max here. I stirred something up at the last minute, and Kaylin didn't know what to do because he's our like golden retriever of the tribe.
Yeah, the one who's actually doing the right thing, and then we accidentally blame him for things that aren't his fault. But let's talk about it because there were 3 advantages found in this episode. 3 advantages, 0 votes. So that's where we're at. And I do think Kaylin is a big part of how this is going to go down because yesterday I summoned knowledge is power when talking about the knowledge that Laura found. This is actual knowledge is power. So great episode for Miles, who gets an idol and knowledge is power. So that was great. And I do wonder what kind of mischief Miles and AJ will kind of concoct between the 2 of them with these advantages. I was like, oh, Kristen's idol's dead in the water. And then I thought, but Logan, interestingly, very, very interesting. She's a big relationship person, big social person. She has a jumper on. She could have tried to hide the idol. Maybe it would have looked sketchy, but she immediately shows and delivers that to Karen and Kaylin. Yep. And I do really wonder about this because I think she's clearly won the battle of relationships with Karen from AJ. And I think that's a credit to her, but I don't know so much about Kaylin. And if Kaylin comes back to this 3 with AJ and Miles and tells them about Logan's idol, then I think AJ could burn the 0 social capital that he has in using Miles' knowledge as power to take Logan's idol, and they could be really packing some heat. So I think Kaylin's very big in this. I think this is really, really fascinating that we have knowledge as power, that we have these 2 new idols in the game. But I do also think the important thing about this, we saw it immediately went wrong when knowledge as power was introduced in 41 into the new era, that knowledge as power was something that people were told about so that people knew to swap their idols. Now, I'm forever anti-swapping idols because actually, if people assume you're swapping your idols, firstly, your idol is safest with you because it's like they assume you've swapped it. They might hit it on someone
the poison's in front of me, but you made that leap of logic, so you must assume that the poison's in front of you, et cetera, et cetera.
And also, as we've seen, if you swap your idol, it's very easy for it to get stolen. So your idol is safest with you, but you'll put out a swapping narrative. But you definitely just don't want people, you don't want to have to try the guessing game. So as long as they never tell anyone that this exists, it's something that's new to Australian Survivor. Just like keep it on the down low, which the US wasn't able to do, and then steal the idol through Kaylin's information. They're going to cause some chaos. This 2 and possibly a 3 with Kaylin. They do have a public idol in Kristen at the very, very least, but I think Logan's idol could be in trouble, and it could be based on her social tendencies, which have been so good and so positive. But if she may have been misreading Kaylin, as many of us do, who has been done so well in riding the middle and who won't split with AJ because he's been so good at that, would he make that aggressive as a move to do that? I don't know. But if he's ever going to like really start amping it up, it might be with those allies on a plan like that. And now Kaylin might be chaotic as well. With Miles and AJ if he's going to go into that camp, but he's been very even keeled. I don't know if he would get into that, but the potential is certainly there.
Yeah, which would make for a very fun moment, right? Poor Annalise, what happened to her with the idol nullifier in season 2, but I would not be completely surprised if Kaylin did it because he also has a bit of an out. He was not the only person that Logan told about the idol. And not to say that he would do it specifically to throw Karen under the bus. And assumingly, as soon as Logan finds Laura at the merge, she is going to tell her that she has an idol. So that's why sometimes, we'll talk about the jungle rat becoming the jungle dog, but like being someone who can out this information can work if you know that multiple parties know it as well, because that not only dilutes the waters, it also throws blame possibly onto other people. And hey, if you want to drive a wedge further between like AJ and Karin, this could also, be or I should say Logan and Karin, if you're fearing, because it does seem like, again, from our perspective, those two have been like pretty thick as thieves throughout the entirety of the post swap. And Karin has certainly been in those conversations where she's like, yeah, we got to get rid of Logan, but I think she has not been nearly pushing it as much as AJ, and perhaps AJ pushing it has pushed her over the edge. And so could be a nice little bit of dirt. I like how we're painting Kaylin as like someone that can be capable of so much mischief.
He is.
Like,
well, of
maybe
mischief, no. Of gameplay, yes. I don't know about the mischief. He's been stable, which is good. Like the mischief, I don't know about. But
this is going to come for everybody, Shannon. We've seen this. Everyone has acted chaotically at some point in time, except for the blob, purple brawn, lavender brawn. They have been the lone ones, except for Kate and Morgan.
I don't know. Ben just yeeted out of the game. So
that's true. That might be the most chaotic. I will say, having the knowledge is power here. It's tough because, listen, AU, I think it's maybe due to the spectacle of it all, and also sort of like a what you see is what you get. I have been a little bit more lenient of like, is this the fairest thing? No. Is this something that can make for a fun TV moment? Yes. Raymond's advantage last season is a perfect example of this. I personally think, it would be best for all the contestants if they all knew that knowledge is power existed. This is the thing we talked about with the idol nullifier at first, right? When it was introduced to David versus Goliath, was like, sorry, hot cop, damn, this thing that never existed before is now part of the season, and you thought this was a get out of jail free card, but I do feel bad if and when this idol does get stolen, if their information does not get out, because there was no feasible way these people could plan for it. At the same time, this is sort of part and parcel with Australian Survivor, and I guess to your earlier point, if people were really super duper fans, which, listen, might be a bit of a stretch in the Australian Survivor in particular, they could have seen that an advantage like this had a possibility of showing up in this season.
Yeah, is it too late to say that KO Lynn could be KO Tick? I don't know. No, it doesn't work. It's fine. I'm running through the Rolodex of my thoughts on Survivor, and I'm pretty sure I don't like the knowledge is power, because we talked about incentives with Pooh yesterday. It incentivizes the players to keep their idol a secret, where it's fun when people, tell each other about their idols. For Kristen, it would be unfortunate because she found it in front of everyone, then Noonan outed it. For Logan, she could wear the fact that she misjudged Kaylin. Like if it, and to be fair, I guess that, they can't expect that knowledge of power is going to be in the game, but I guess sharing your idol always comes with some risk. And knowledge of power is something that exists in the Survivor universe, but very unforeseeable in Australian Survivor. But that was what it would come down to. Where she would wear that would be underestimating Kaylin. Like if Kaylin is the one to share that information, like again, she won the battle of relationships with Karin. Is she not understanding how much Kaylin, who's always defending AJ, I think really might be on the AJ train, and maybe telling Kaylin was ill-advised, or looking with Kaylin. Like I think there are other ways that she could have done it. Again, she was wearing a jumper. I don't know how close they were because they weren't in the shot, but if you could try, if she had to, because Kaylin was going to see it.
I think they were pretty close. If you could like tell watching the screen, she's like, "Come over here," and then she calls off, and then like 2 seconds later, Kaylin.
Yeah, that is.
I think
true.
they were all in pretty much proximity with each other.
And you'd hate to like try and hide it, and then you look really, really sketchy.
You don't want to do poop idol out in the jungle.
It might have what?
You don't want to pull a shard and try to hide the idol and it falls out.
Right. Okay. I'm like, I know, again, going through the Rolodex, which one was poop idol? Right. Shan and the poop. You don't want to do that. It might have just been unfortunate. I'd love to know from Logan how much her intention was to share with Kaylin out of relationship building. And that might be a misread, or how much was just circumstance, which would be more unfortunate. But I do think it's really, really interesting that we now have this, and that it's in Miles's hands. I mean, what an episode for Miles. I do wonder when he found the idol, because there was less happening in this episode, so they could also just put it into this episode. But from our perspective, it was like a wonderful day and a half for him.
Oh my God. Absolutely incredible. And I do like what he talks about in this confessional, which is this idea that sort of, I wouldn't say like steering into the curve, but because he is regarded as the jungle rat, like people are sketched out by him supposedly being sneaky anyway. So why doesn't he just sneak out and start looking for idols. Like, what's the worst that could happen? They continue to call him the thing they've been calling him for 21 days at this point. So, like, I absolutely love that. I mean, you don't want to necessarily get targeted with this schemy demeanor, but at the same time, I'm glad he's able to take advantage of it and be like, all right, if everyone thinks I'm looking for idols, I guess I should start looking for idols. And as a result, he is able to find one. I mean, I don't know, Shannon. Like, I kind of want to manifest this. I think Miles has a really freaking good chance of winning this game. I think he
Well, that would
has.
be great.
Because I'm just thinking about, like, and yes, it would be wild. It would arguably be like one of the best AU winner narratives, considering like where he came from, getting what, like 12 votes against him in the pre-merge, including 2 on a vote that he wasn't even in consideration for. It was to send somebody over. They were throwaway votes.
Well, they were kind votes.
But like the fact that he was able to find an idol, find, this knowledge is power that could possibly get him another idol. I think the place that he would be looked at the most would be this pre-merge for various reasons, whether it be due to perceived challenge weakness or, again, a perception about him. I think now that he's going to reach the merge, he's going to have, a good amount of people around him that trust him. I mean, again, even towards the end of the post-merge, like, he was getting brought in on an alliance. If Brains had actually cast a vote in this group of episodes, it would not have been on him. I think it is sort of what we talked about before with people like a George, of like, you can be the perennial target, but sometimes all you need is time. And when enough time happens and enough minds change, then you get less considered as the primary target. And so I just could see a world where, especially once we have AJ occupying the same beach as him, that works for him in multiple ways. A, because this is going to be his locked-in number 1 ally.
And
B,
Jay.
Exactly. And Jay, he's going to have such a much bigger target. And he's going to continue to probably create a bigger target for himself by the way that he's going to regard this new group of people that don't know him from a hole in the wall. I am envisioning right now an AJ Miles final 2.
Oh, don't. That would be amazing.
I'm making it happen. I think it could. I think, to me, AJ is giving me big losing finalist edit vibes at the moment.
I think I'm getting like consensus merge boot or
No.
thereabouts. Really? Yeah, I could see that. Do you know what gets me though? Is that they will call Miles Dish Boy and they'll laugh in front of his face about how he's always on the bottom. They treat him horribly. But when it comes to the point of the spaghetti reward, they're like, we're all going to congenially pick sticks. People are so polite with this stuff. Now, maybe it's hard because the Brawn majority in itself is fractured, and I still don't really know how that would have gone. Like, even when they're talking now, Kate's like, I better make nice with Jesse so that he thinks we're good, like, while he's here kind of thing. Like, she kind of makes it temporary. I do kind of think they would have stuck together through this out of necessity, but, like, their Brawn is fractured, but, like, you do technically have a Brawn majority. It's crazy to me that they're not just like, Miles, you're last, Laura, you're second last, and the 5 of us are picking sticks, because he finds it second last, but they're really giving, like, I mean, they can split the vote, but, like, even going to the merge, they're giving a lot of power. And it's just so funny that they're so polite on the stick picking. We're, like, so proper. But when we get back to camp, we're, like, throwing dirt at Miles,
Well, maybe it is this idea that, like, on the battlefield, like, we're not simians. We have manners. We, ironically enough, given that we talk about this, one of our requisite rewards where people just mercilessly tear into food with their bare hands and other stuff. But it's like, all right, we draw the line somewhere. And that is, we always do fair and equitable random draws to determine who goes where in rewards. But otherwise, Miles, as soon as you leave this, you are not on the same playing field as us, buddy.
Yeah, it's like, you're not a human being at camp, but here you're an equal part of the stick picking. I just, something happens to the players. It happens with the journeys with the US now that have been changed to a game. But, like, usually with these decisions, it's like, well, last night we voted against you. There's no like hiding the fact that we're a clear majority and you're on the outs. But today, let's all pick to see who gets this advantage.
I mean, like, to be fair, US forced their hand. If Say had her say, she would have been like, nope, Mary, you're outvoted. Time to go.
I talked about it on the 48 recap, but yes, I agree. I think that, and anyway, I've been talking about how the journeys are, like, not congenial, too congenial, in the US, and I think here as well, it was just funny how the Brawn were like, how they gave him a chance. It was so obvious it was under the pasta.
I know. That's the thing, is that all of these, rewards that we have been to have this quite literal centerpiece, right? You have to think about to the original time they did this with the gnarly plate of nachos, and it was underneath that think back to a previous spaghetti reward in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers. It was the plate itself. So quite surprised. I mean, good on the producers for apparently putting so many incredible tasting meatballs in it that these people were so blinded by their love of marinara that they quite literally got lost in the sauce and did not notice that there was going to be something written beneath. But the wild thing is, and this again is a hallmark of Australian Survivor, is like Miles so far has found 3 idols and advantages. Only one was really due to like hard work and effort. You know, there was the other one that was sort of the one out of spite that was like, come on, pricks, I found the idol. This one was shit, check under the shelf. He didn't, from our perspective, he did not check the shelter. He was doing chores. He was palm frond boy. And he's like, let me throw, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah, I guess it did say shelter. Oh, well,
Yeah,
I got
is
it
true.
anyway.
Yeah, that is true. But like, okay, I mean, even I was like, maybe they just don't know that it like they're not fans enough to know to search. But like, no, they like Jesse is searching. They're like, did you
Yeah.
find anything? Like they knew, but they didn't care, which was different. A couple of things on this tribe. The first thing is, can I just okay? I've been thinking about the Lord thing, right? Because it's not just that the listeners audit me; I audit myself. I think about because yesterday I was very harsh
This tax
on
season,
Laura.
it's time to get audited.
Yeah, and I don't even know if that's right use of the word audit. Anyway, and that's something I'll audit later after this podcast. Yeah, for the next one. I was thinking about so Laura, I was harsh on yesterday because I'm like, either you're the vote and you're going there, which is great, or you win the vote, which is better. Why would you upend this? And then I'm like, well, maybe she thinks like if they're not with her, then they're lying to her, so she's not the vote.
Mm-hmm.
Then like Zara or Miles are going and she's getting left at the bottom, which is the position I put Zara in yesterday. But two things, I'm really trying, but two things on that is that she really seemed to think she was the target and that was the fear. And the second thing is that I expected Zara to wear that yesterday. Like that's also not enough of a fear to try and like ruin this vote that was going to like make the whole game for the Brains and certainly for Laura, where Ron were going to flip on each other. So I'm just really, really trying here. But like even this whole episode, like obviously a big storyline was this big chasm between Zara and Laura. Oh. There's so many things here. Like firstly, even Zara being like, Laura and I found an advantage. There's no reason for you to kind of lie about that. Don't call it an advantage. Like don't even mention that it was a clue. Just be like, there was this twist and like, we got information about it. It was just information. Just even making it an advantage is A, wrong, and J, like it's upping like Laura's entitlement to going, which she never had. Like don't feed into that narrative. And then even like when she's talking to Zara, like walking up the stairs for the wrestling match where I really thought the injury was going to happen.
I know. I was going to say, well, luckily, right, they went after JLP gave the warning. Otherwise, that might have been the case.
Yeah, it's just like murdering Zara in that moment. She was like, everything you thought I'd do to you, you did to me. It's like, yeah, everything you were about to do to her. So how can you be mad? Even now I'm trying. I really am trying. And it's impossible that Laura is this upset with Zara for stealing nothing, an equal opportunity to go to the other side. And the craziest thing about it is this rift has happened on what will be no vote and then emerge. Actually, what Laura got out of staying was pasta and nothing else happened. So it was true. And this is the rift. So anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like we didn't cut to her reaction after the fact, but I would not be surprised if she had a confessional after winning that immunity challenge being like, haha, justice has been served, much like my pasta. I mean, here's the thing. Honestly, what it came down to me was like, I had this plan and you took my plan. I think that is at its simplest what it comes down to. It is also perhaps picking at like some pre-existing drama that had happened within that group. Anyway, I know that Zara had feigned this dementia to be like, oh, I didn't mean to vote against you. But, you know, there was clearly that's some stuff stemming back from the rich stuff, right? Where like, I think Zara and Laura were probably the two most outspoken in both of those camps. So as much as we saw them kind of align in their, incredulousness towards Miles and his ability to flap his gums, like, I don't know if it was necessarily always going to be a completely cohesive relationship. No. And so I think this was just more so a way to embellish, like, oh yeah, I knew she never would had my back. Like, of course, what's so interesting about this to me, Shannon, maybe this is talking a bit about like the season up to this point, is I am in love with the Coven. Like the Coven.
Yeah, even when they're walking up the stairs, they're like, my Coven member. I'm like, the Coven is cursed. If we talk about curses, if anything.
Well, because what is so wild about it is like, it is so emotionally complex. You know what it reminds me of? Let's talk about another TV show that people are talking about right now. This reminds me so much of the trio from The White Lotus, where it's like to each other's faces,
Well, all the
right?
shows. I'm one episode behind on the White Lotus, though.
I won't say it, but
Yeah.
but I won't spoil too much by saying
Oh,
like
the
they're
Coven. Oh, it's such a good comparison. Like, oh,
yeah,
it's
like
perfect.
because
Oh,
they're
I
so
love it.
they're
Wait,
so
but why
amiable and
aren't there
friendly.
memes of this yet? Like, it's perfect.
Yeah, so
Zara and Laura and the face. It's that, the face. It's, yes.
yeah, because
Yes.
the thing is that for
Brilliant.
those that don't know, so they're in the White Lotus, there's a group of 3 friends played by Carrie Coon, Leslie Bibb, and Michelle Monaghan, and they're like close, like high school friends who live in different parts of the country. And basically, what
They
happens
hate
is
each
like,
other.
yeah, is that every time, like every episode ends with 2 of them shit talking the other person while the other person's gone. And so, like, this is them. Is that to each other's faces? They're like, oh my god, I can't stand this other person. Like, you're the only one who understands. We want to make sure that the coven works. Girl power. But then almost always they break off into these configurations where like, I can't stand her. I cannot believe that she did that. Like it is, and that's what makes it so invigorating to me is like, that's the complexity of human relationships. Yes, these people just met 3 weeks ago. Yes, they're playing in a game for $1 million, starving in their underwear, but like they love and they hate each other at the same time whenever it is convenient. And so
but the love is a little less.
Well, the love is through hatred of others, right? It's like, oh my god, I can't believe what Miles did, and that's where you find a connection point. That was Logan and Corin. Was, oh my god, look at what AJ did. And so to have watched this alliance, this group of 4 women in particular, no offense, Allie, like the ebbs and flows they have underwent over these 12 episodes, including going into the merge, I am inherently fascinated by, just as like a study of human behavior.
Zara is the Austin one. I don't know their names.
Mm-hmm.
Karen is the New York one.
Mm-hmm.
Logan is, I don't have space for Laura then, but Logan is the
Logan and Laura can be the
Yeah.
LA one together.
Oh my god, I love it so much. It's so right, and it's such an indictment on where female friendships are in TV representation right now, but it's so good. Brilliant comparison. Yeah, the fact that the Coven's even being mentioned now is so funny and really so false. So I love that. I have a question for you about Paulie. Paulie was going to go home here.
Yes.
If he did, and he didn't, but if he wins, how much do we put on him that he's saved by the non-elim? How much is this Paulie's fault?
Ooh, yeah, this is a good question because, look, it has certainly been assigned to some winners of Australian Survivor as like, well, had this not happened, then they would have been gone. And in some cases, it's like, well, listen, this is par for the course with Australian Survivor where production throws something in and it's going to naturally benefit them or work against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to put like a fairly large asterisk here because this is even like, well, it's Australian Survivor, anything can happen. I don't think Australian Survivor, anything can happen encompasses the idea of like people might leave the game for nondescript reasons that are on the other tribe. This isn't even like a Stephanie Janu situation where someone's like, God, I feel so bad for Paulie. Let me leave in their place. It was just pure happenstance that this person on the other tribe had this thing happen at this portion of time. But also, if we're talking about like Final Destination, could it be possible that the Survivor gods were trying to protect Paulie at every instance and like they just nicked PD, just missed him and they finally landed the shot on Ben?
Well, for me, it's less about what saved him and why he was in that position. So like why he's in that position, firstly, the things we can credit him with is like he was in a terrible swap.
Yeah.
In a tribe that was losing more challenges. Like he got to this point, to be fair. If they just win that one, like, do we say the same thing if someone was going to go, but they win the one challenge? We don't. So, I mean, I guess that's more earned to win like a tribal challenge, but it feels pretty marginal to me. So for me, the terrible swap speaks in his favor. The fact that he gets through 3 tribal councils to this point does speak in his favor. But the kind of things that are negative, he does try everything. But firstly, he loses so many relationships. So it's we saw the divide and like what he puts, the stock he puts in Kristen versus what she's always put in him. Like, it's not even just that he's more invested. Like, he doesn't even realize how uninvested she's always been. And to be fair to Kristen, like, she definitely should never help Paulie with the idol. Like, she's probably going to be in the middle anyway. And if anything, Paulie is much more of an anchor and she knows that. So the divide in that relationship is a negative. And then I think the biggest negative that we can say, even though I do think the asterisk would be minor for me because the swap was bad. But yes, the biggest part of the asterisk would be that I felt like he used his idol badly on Sunday night, that he didn't try and get the numbers back, that he just like cozied up to them and got himself into the point where everything he had done only got him to the point where it was going to be probably a unanimous vote. You know, that's not good enough when you have, I thought, other things at his disposal. And I was actually also talking about this. We were talking about it in our group chat with Omer this morning about the Sunday night episode, because I was like, well, you know, it's hard because even if, say, like a Logan flips, or like I said, AJ's had, you know, has less reason to flip because he has his idol. But if like a Logan flips, AJ is going to be saved. And Omer was talking about a minority vote split. So the idea of like, if he can get Kristen on board and even just try, and maybe the divide in the relationship speaks negatively to that, but if he can try, it would actually stop being a minority. But if you get Logan over, you do a 3-3-1. It does give Logan the chance to flip back on the revote, but also it just means like chef's kiss, you put 1 on Kaylin. If AJ plays it, he goes home. There were options there. And then even if you don't have the numbers, because if you don't have the numbers and you want to play your idols, a 2-1 minority vote split makes a lot of sense in case the other side have an idol, which AJ did. If you do have the numbers, just to protect against AJ's possible idol, knowing you have ammo on your other side to protect means you don't go back to a 0-0 revote where probably like a Noonan goes. It means that 1 vote on Kaylin snipes Kaylin on a 3-3-1, if that makes sense. It's because you have your own idol ammo that you should think about splitting a vote in case everyone's protected. It's a 1 vote win rather than a 0-0. There's potential there. But even, I think what's really important is even if you don't go to the 1 vote split, which is, you know, very big brain for people who weren't even working together, I understand. But the point is, even if you try to crack them and use the power of your idol and try get Kristen over and give that as leverage and give that as an offering, and it doesn't work, and AJ negates the votes, and Noonan does go home on a 0-0 revote, and you didn't split the 1, today looks different. Yep. Then if Logan is flipped, even if it doesn't work on AJ, today is not just like a unanimous vote on Paulie because push has come to shove on the cracks in the brains, but he didn't try to crack the brains. That's the biggest part of the asterisk for me. But I do think, you know, other people just get a great swap where they can just kind of like mosey through the whole swap, and that's different too. So we have to like factor all of that in. But yeah, we like, you know, he escaped death today, so we do have to think about it.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, he was already crucified in an earlier challenge, so I think it only makes sense. Finally, the rock is rolled away from the cave. Yeah, I totally co-sign what you said of like, and we saw this with Laura and Zara as well, that it just comes down to, yes, maybe there is some sense to like, I'm going to cozy up to the majority and not draw a line in the sand and vote alongside them. But the vast majority of the time, unless you have like a very good relationship with a couple of people within that majority where you feel like you can crack in there, there's no sense to do that. If anything, you were just buttering yourself up to say like, oh, if they're just going to make this easy, then great. I can vote him out next time. And he won't cause that much of a stir because he didn't cause that much of a stir when his closest ally was going home. In fact, he voted for her. So I understand on surface, like I would imagine what Paulie was doing was, to your point, just trying to curry favor. Maybe he felt like there were some of the brains he was close with. I don't entirely know, considering how much he torched AJ at that tribal council, but maybe he thought, okay, if I just get through this vote and then we win a couple challenges, then I just need to put my head down and get to the merge. But to your point, this was not a tribe where you necessarily had to bank on that. In fact, like the times that we've seen new brains lose were when they were throwing it. And that's still WTF thing that happened with the trough in yesterday's episode. So like, you can't necessarily rely on that. You have to be sure, I think, to commit in a way, if you do that, that makes you feel like there are outs for you in the future. And I think Paulie pursued a route that just had considerably fewer outs. Like, was it a riskier thing to do in the moment? Absolutely. But it would have put him in the exact same spot as he would have been had Ben not left.
To do, oh right,
like
he was
like if it failed, he'll be next to go anyway. So
exactly.
Take the
you
chance.
Need to you're in a tribe that's going to lose. You need to take it on. Now, in fairness to Paulie, he tried, right? It was like someone ruined the Braun gambit every time. First it was Ursula, he was
Yep.
trying. Then it was Noonan, he was trying. The third time was on him. So the other times it's like he was trying and he was clawing on in a bad swap, and I can only blame him that one time, but I really do blame him for that one time, and that's where I sit with it. Yeah, but in terms of yesterday, we were wondering if Braun threw. We thought not, or New Brains, right? Whatever. They're the Brauns.
Yeah.
We were wondering if they threw. Does the fact that they won today make it look like they especially didn't throw yesterday, or does the fact that they cracked as a majority and it's like particularly tenuous now may mean that yesterday's throw or not throw is like a completely different reality to where we are right now? I still don't think they threw, but it is.
I don't think they did.
Today. Yeah.
I don't know. Like it almost looked like faulty equipment. Like the way that everyone was like, "What the hell happened?"
That. No more lawsuits, please.
No, we're trying to remember what we talked about a week ago. We're trying to fill a season, Shannon. Come on. I mean,
No.
PD seems like he's in the wings, waiting for it to happen.
The show will not survive. But all right, I want to talk about. Should we get to the Chizzy and then spend just a few minutes talking just future planning?
Oh yeah, because we're gonna talk about how do we assign Chizzy points to this? Is a very good question.
Hey, this is what Rob said. And no, Rob's not right. We're gonna do it. Take it away, Jacob Sager Weinstein and MC Color.
1, 2, 3. 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 3. It's getting kind of Chizzy. 3, 2, 1.
All right. Tough one.
Ooh, I've got I think I've got an idea.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go. I'm giving 3 for Miles. In an episode with no vote, he got 2 advantages. Great. Miles winner arc impending.
That's what I'm saying. From jungle rat to jungle dog. It's no lion to lamb, but I guess we can go full Animorphs here if we want to.
Yes. So, okay. Good episode for Miles. I think it speaks for itself. I'm giving 2 to Logan. She won Karen over and she got an idol. I'm a little worried about Kaylin. But especially if she kind of had to show him, then I put even less on her. So 2 to Logan. And then, which is funny because I see people like, oh, well, why is Logan getting points in the episodes where she's not even seen? It's been explained because she's really socially insulated. Like the fact that the Chizzy awards that over a really consistent Chizzy where we're giving points every episode is good, because people who are really socially insulated but who aren't necessarily going to get points when we're giving points for a whole week because they didn't do the flashy thing, especially when the flashy things have so often been negative. Like the fact that we can give consistently socially good gameplay points is a win for where the Chizzy is right now, and I think has been well explained for the points that someone like Logan and Karen, who's been like really controlling things, have got over the season. Like it's been explained, and I think is good. So I'm giving 2 to Logan, and she got an idol. This one might be questioned, but I think it was tough. I'm giving 1 to PD. Why? Because could PD win before today? We don't know. We knew nothing about him, but soldiering on through the shoulder, that's a story. That could win in a final too. Like I think PD could win now, so I'm giving him 1 point. The honorable mention I'll give to Kristen because I think she could be in the middle anyway. Obviously, right not to use the idol for Paulie. The way she's ingratiated has been good, but I've kind of given points for that. It depends on which way Kaylin goes, but if Kaylin doesn't want to make like massive big moves and wants to kind of still ride the middle and be very stable and not like blow up the game to, you know, help Miles and AJ use knowledge is power on Logan's idol, then Kristen's idol is like ripe for the taking. So that's the that's kind of one thing there. But I look, the point up for PD, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think I remember clear as day, Shannon, that there was an episode of Survivor South Africa Immunity Island, spoiler alert, where it was a pretty straightforward vote, but we ended up, I remember the Chizzy winner that week was a player who like did really well in a challenge. And that's why, I mean, really, really well. He saved people's lives in a challenge, and he ended up winning the Chizzy because it was like, listen.
Well, PD didn't do very well in the challenge.
I mean, he did very admirably, I would say. You know, he put up a fight. But I will
much of a fight.
Yeah, that scene will haunt me of him like screaming in pain. Was like, God, so visceral. Which again, it made me so surprised why he didn't get pulled. I was like, did this dude just snap his arm in half wrestling with Kaylin over a ring for pasta?
Point for that.
Also, I loved, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, when Brains were morosely sitting in the shelter waiting for PD, Kate was holding like a doggy bag of pasta to loose spaghetti just waiting.
They said he deserves it more than anyone.
Do you think he got the loose bag of pasta when he came back?
The cold pasta? I think that they should give him his own little pasta station. And he lost out on the opportunity to look for the idol as well. Yeah.
I mean, that is interesting, right? It's like what we talked about last week of like, well, the sit-outs weren't able to look for the idol in the
Yeah.
challenge. That's what happens with Petey.
Yeah.
All right, so these are gonna look very similar for me. I will give 3 to Miles and 2 to Logan for very similar reasons. Like, look, in an episode where there was barely any strategy and not a vote, I have to look to like who gained the most stock. Miles far and away gained the most stock. Not to mention looking ahead to the merge, he's finally gonna be able to like join up with the allies that he wants to, and he has an idol and basically guaranteed to find another one if it hits in the right place. I will give 2 to Logan. As I mentioned before, do not love this idea of like her and Karen just stirring up a hornet's nest by deciding to vote for AJ if they ended up doing so. But as you mentioned, like it's no skin off the back for Logan. And I'm not entirely sure how she's going to do it merge. We'll talk about this. I'm sure we'll prognosticate a bit. Like I think a lot of that early stuff is going to wear on her a bit more. Now everyone's going to see like, oh, she is really social. She is very popular. She is very powerful. Let's get rid of her. So for this episode, though, very much raised her stock. I think I'm going to give 1 to Kaylin.
Yeah.
For his
the other side of that.
super satanic move of breaking a man's arm to try to get pasta. No, it's because of, I think, again, the stuff he
He's
had
in the
with,
center of everything.
yeah, I mean, he literally talked.
Should I give a point of a Petey?
No, I think I keep Petey in there. I think we should acknowledge both sides of the tussle here. The fact of the matter is there was a moment where AJ was going off on another cockamamie play, and I'm like, all right, I think we could get the votes onto Logan instead. He's like, no, Paulie first, then Logan. Like he seemed to be, again, this stable force that no matter what the conversation was with these people that continue to just stew and not like each other, he's the one to come in and say, hey, just as a reminder, this is the plan, by the way. And that is an incredibly vital role to play.
I'm changing my vote. Yeah, it's not about. Sorry, Petey. Honorable mention that you're soldiering through it and you could win, but like, no, I have to give it to Kaylin because Kaylin has been, I think, really stabilizing. And again, he didn't make that mistake we thought he made. I did give him a cheesy point, I think, that episode. But yeah, I think it's him being so stable. It's having to talk down the AJs. We're like, no, I'm not going to put my neck out there. It's getting the information from Logan. I think that he just is. He could almost get 2 over Logan.
Well, yeah, he was the one as well that like when Karen and Logan approached him and they said, oh yeah, we want to get rid of AJ. I'm pretty sure he was one that also said, yeah, okay, but Paulie then AJ.
He's doing a lot of work just like holding it down when everyone's fighting. I'm giving him 2 and I'm pushing Logan down to 1. I think the thing with Logan is she gets the idol, she's won Karen over, and she's right not to like push AJ here because, I mean, AJ is unfortunate for her. But then also I feel like AJ in many ways is such like a leper that it should be fine. Like, you know, who are going to be the numbers that are going to work? I don't think she should flip on AJ here. I think that is a lot, and it's also not viable because like I don't think Karen's doing it now. Zara's not doing it. Kaylin's not doing it. I don't even know that. I mean, maybe what? So it's Kristen and Paulie like trying to get, that's not even a majority, like trying to get that on some type of split, or the numbers of which I don't have available to me right now. Well, they're all voting Paulie, unless now we're using the split on AJ. Maybe then that's the accidental AJ vote. I don't think that if you can even get the numbers for it, that it's the right thing to do. I think that it's a lot right now, and maybe AJ stays with you on like a small brains majority at the merge where Paulie's not helpful at all, but AJ is particularly bad for her, and he is coming back 2 miles, and they do, not that she knows that, but they do have a lot of firepower. I don't know that there's anything she can do in it, but I think, both of them getting through this portion of the game, the swap with each other, is probably not great, even if I'm like, again, in this moment, I'm not like, push it on AJ, right?
No,
you don't think you should push it on AJ?
I think it would be really tough to do because I think, to your point, what she's probably looking to do is like, if you look at the merge, I don't see any brawn that will work with AJ. I think they are not happy with the hostages plan, and I think that Paulie is going to jump right over to them and talk about all the stuff that he was doing. And if there is, as much aligned with his integrity and morals as they seem, because remember also, like, kind of, Petey was the last remaining member of like Nash's friends as well. So they pretty much have been together since the beginning alongside Noonan. So like AJ's not going to flip in this moment to work with them. And so that is going to allow this tenuous brains majority to hold. I do think, and maybe this is tying into a bit of like post-merge discussion as well. Like, I think we are going to get, I could see like a Jesse boot at the merge. Like, I could see a very easy It's actually interesting because I know I talk a lot about how the merge, especially in US Survivor, tends to be kind of like a, hey, whatever name is easiest for the group, like don't stick your neck out too far. Australian Survivor, that sometimes isn't the case. Like the con boot is a great example of that. But even something like the David Zaharakis boot, right, was like the Vigilantes' first move. That was like their big line in the sand. So they are not afraid to draw blood. I mean, the first, one after that was everything going on with the winner as well, which was also a big line in the sand moment. So like I do not think they would be afraid to like call a stark difference here and then muddy the line later on. And so maybe from Logan's perspective, she feels like AJ has nowhere to go. I again find this fascinating because I think that Logan and AJ have spent the entire pre-merge trying to target each other, but either due to timing, advantages, or just the people they were playing with, they have never found the ability to do so. And that's the interesting thing about an individual game now is like they are not beholden to maybe some of the group dynamics that a tribal game would provide.
Yeah, I think that at its most shallow, if it's going to be at like 7-6 at the merge, just making it a 6-7, as much as the people in your 7 aren't very helpful, like from an AJ Logan perspective, does seem somewhat self-defeating. And we did even see like the Titans and Rebels get it back together when they needed to, when it became like, okay, but now we're going to war, so we're going to like put our differences aside, at least for the short term. So I do think that's like a big thing for Logan, who also can't foresee that like AJ's making his way back to Miles. Miles has had nothing, and now he has 2 advantages. Like that's unforeseeable. So I think that not going for AJ here is the right move, but I think that these things are concerning. And so for the people doing the charts, Randy and the Survivor Fact Checker, I'm doing 3 for Miles, 2 for Kaylin, 1 for Logan now. And I do think Kaylin's position is important going forward, because if I look through to this merge, I mean, it's very cut up. The factions are kind of like Laura and Logan as connected to like Karen, Kaylin, but like Kara's so interesting because like, and she's really against AJ. Like I even like we're talking about could Logan get the numbers? Like maybe seems like Karen was like itching, like just Paulie, Kristen, who's really been with Logan, which is a credit to Logan. Karen, Paulie, Kristen, and Logan would have been, but I think she was itching. But it's interesting, and then that's the conduit to like the Miles, Zara, and AJ side. And then Kristen, I think, is like a swing potential between both groups, and then like the Brawns have the guy-girl fracture, and then I feel like maybe
but I don't think. But I mean, like, I mean, you have this conversation with Kate and Jesse, right? Where Kate literally says, like, "All right, for at least one vote, we're going to stick together." I don't think Jesse's getting.
I think
his
they meant
dream.
pre-merge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Jesse's getting his dream super majority, but like, I would also imagine, like, again, we don't know the circumstances that Ben left under. There could be a bit of like a rally around the tribe flag effect, where it's like, okay, there's one less of us now, so we need to stick together now more than ever. Like, yes, there might be configurations that cause the cracks immediately, but they are down 7-6, so they might think
it's like if we can just pull an AJ.
Exactly, or we can pull like the hunks might activate and we can pull Miles in. I could see this being like the first big moves that Miles makes of the game, of like sort of like what George did, of like, oh well, I guess George was able to still kind of be undercover and get Haley to play the idol correctly, but like, if I would imagine Miles actually might be perceived as the swing between these two sides, because everyone's going to think that Laura's just going to hop over with Logan automatically. But it's like, hey, remember the Brains treated you like shit? Like, we didn't vote you out. We voted Max out. Don't you want to come work with us instead? It's almost like trying to push the Cochran narrative onto him.
Yeah, really low bar. It's like, wow, which of these sides has treated you worse? Actually, probably the Brawn. And I don't know that it was a low bar, but they've treated him so terribly. It's been very, very antisocial, and I don't think he's going to work with them. Like, if Miles and AJ, and I guess Kaylin has allies, but Miles and AJ don't have a lot of allies, but they have advantages and each other, and that's going to be, I think, the chaos. And we don't know a lot about what the Brawn dynamics were. They've always been such a monolith, but we know that like Petey and Kristen were on the Nash side. We know Paulie and Kristen have their divide. We know that, Petey's kind of like also with the guys, and that there's this kind of girl-guy divide. So if it ever gets to the point where they're not a monolith, that's how it might shake out. But this is the thing, is that I think it seems interesting. It's a 7-6 with 2 very, very divided groups. And this is the thing about the season, as we are way over time for the podcast, but it's fine. It's the last recap of the week.
There was a lot of weird shit that happened in this episode. We can go over time.
People have days to listen. I think I like this season, and people have only seen Sunday night this week, and people already seem kind of negative, which is interesting because I feel like
you don't
they're
know
gonna,
what you're in store for, people, you beautiful summer children.
yeah, they're gonna get the Monday non-elim. We'll talk about it in the feedback show. They're gonna get the Monday non-elim. I thought that was a great episode. People are very down on non-elims. I thought that was done well. I think production has been great. We never got like the episode 10 of last season with the twist that I hated. It's been actually very normal production.
I'm actually very surprised we did not have an entire like, all right, we're gonna make Tribal Council an entire episode. Like, I think maybe they felt like the castaways were creating their own drama that they didn't necessarily need to drag it out to the evening portion.
They were doing that on Titans v Rebels as well, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, like,
True.
and we had that in Heroes v Villains as well. We didn't get that. It worked really, really well on Heroes v Villains. People loved it in Titans v Rebels. I hated it. I think production's been, like Kaylin, very even keeled and also great. Like Kaylin, it's had great challenges. I think the non-elims have been handled well. I think people won't like the non-elim because they don't like non-elims. I really liked that episode. I thought it was really interesting. This episode was a dud, even though we've talked about it now for an hour 10 going on. But I think it's interesting because it's never boring. And that's all you can really, you don't want it to be super negative. And I guess the season is tending a bit to that, like with the way Miles has been treated and like some of it, like the characters can tend to negative, like entertaining, but maybe in a negative way for some. And we've talked about the people don't have people to root for. I have people to root for. You know, I like a lot of them that I'm cheering on. I like Paulie. I like the AJ, Miles, Kaylin trio. Your mileage may vary on like an AJ, I get, but like a lot of the Coven as well. So I'm having a good time. And I think it's always, other than tonight, usually very, very interesting. For me, that's what keeps me entertained. I'm also really enjoying covering the season with my 3 Powerpuff Girls as Professor Utonium. I think that speaks to it. And look, no one can say that now that I'm being positive about it because I work for Channel 10, because I don't. So look, you'll know when I don't like Australian Survivor. I once compared covering Blood versus Water to wearing a Horcrux, and All Stars was a not insignificant part of a genuine mental breakdown that I had. Okay, you'll know when I don't like it. Right now, I'm having fun. Tonight, that one was a dud. Yeah. Otherwise, most of the episodes have been interesting. I think 5 through 11 were all straight fire, and there was interesting stuff before that. And we still have stuff to talk about now, clearly, because we're still talking. So I'm liking it even, and I think the merge is set up in an interesting way. I'm liking it. I feel like, I don't know if just social media is negative and I'm trying to stay off it, but the stuff like permeates to me. People seem kind of negative, and some people like, I hate the challenge throwing, but I think that's been so interesting. So I guess it's all about subjective taste. I'm enjoying it, and I'm not paid by Channel 10 anymore. So you can't even blame it on that, but anyway, it's fine.
Yeah, that's what someone who was paid by Channel 10 would say, Shannon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I have really been enjoying this. Look, it was basically going to be a step back from Titans v Rebels no matter what. Like, that is just,
that was one of the best seasons of all time.
Exactly. So like it's almost tough to compare it to, but like I have had so much fun with the drama of this season. And there's been some fun gameplay as well in the realms of just trying to puzzle through what people are thinking at each and every turn. But I think what's so interesting is, again, the way to unlock it is that a lot of these people are being driven by emotions. And again, I think it varies so much from other players in previous Survivor seasons who are more so driven by tactics. And I think there are 2 different discussions to be had, but I don't think it makes it any less valid. I have been really enjoying, like, honestly, the Brains tribe might be up there as one of my favorite starting tribes in AU history. Like, there was just so much going on. There is still so much going on. I think the small detractions I have are the fact that on the other side, Braun didn't really bring a lot so far. Considering
we're a bit of a snooze, yeah.
Yeah, like we're entering with 6 Braun, and Kristen has had her moments, and obviously Paulie's a standout, but like the other 4 we don't know too much about, and they haven't had these huge moments. So like, I am personally banking on the Brains
I almost gave
to dominate.
Petey a Chizzy point.
There you go. He had that going for him. He had that brief glimpse into the sunshine.
Yeah. Hey, he had a Chizzy point from the first episode. I think he got 2 even, Chappelle gave him. So
yeah, but I was enjoying, like, especially the streak of like these big blowhard guys kind of get what's coming to them. Like, I had really counted on some combination of like Nash, Rich, Kent, and Max to make their way into the post-merge, either based on challenge strength or because it's like, yeah, they're loud mouths and they play aggressively, but eventually they'll be able to slip under the radar. But no, that's not the case. And then somehow the chaos of all 4 of them have been sucked up into AJ, who is just playing this odd game that I think is, again, going to lose it for him in the end. I think that clip of him saying that every other player is stupid except for me is going to absolutely be like the canary in the coal mine to that eventual cave in. But I have really been enjoying just this idea. Again, I compare it to Big Brother 26. I would also compare it to Survivor 46 as well. And I similarly heard some complaints lodged as well, to your point about, like, I could very much understand if you are watching Survivor for, like, specific characters or people you want to root for. Maybe not everyone's going to be everyone's cup of tea. If you're watching for, like, I want to see next level gameplay and people outgaming each other, that is not going to be this. But I've said it every single time I've come out here. I'm just so happy that these people are trying, because when they are trying, they are pissing other people off, and it is making for such delicious TV. I mean, they have made such explosive moments. It was the most explosive season ever, JLP teased. And I think they have always made such fun opportunities to just interact with each other. And again, create these coven complexities of talking nice with each other in the moment and then shit talking each other behind the backs and working together and then working separately. Like, it's been a lot to follow, and that is just one tribe. So I'm really hoping, I would say it keeps up the momentum. I think it's really tough that we essentially ended with a 1-2 punch of womp womp. To your
I
point,
liked yesterday's episode.
I enjoyed the back and forth at Tribal Council of Laura and Zara basically
that was
trying
so
to.
interesting.
I thought that was so
Brawn
much
flipped
fun.
on each other.
Yeah, they're like,
to.
they literally split apart of like, no, we should vote for Laura, no, we should vote for Zara. Like, it was a Pyrrhic vote, but it was a
No,
very
I mean, they
spiritual
flipped
vote.
on each other.
Yeah,
like, the
that's true
women
as well.
were going to flip on the men too, as
Yeah.
well. That's a big
Yeah.
episode for a Monday.
So, I do think that hopefully we'll get some rest, we'll get some time to build our hype for the post-merge, and I hope they hit the ground running, considering everything that has been built up to this point has been a lot of fun, and I know this is going to be a very dramatic finish. Even if it is like a clean sweep and the graduates run the table, having some of these people on the jury is going to be very fun come finale night. And I'm very looking forward to only 4 weeks from now, Shannon, where we get to break it all down.
The graduates aren't going to run the table because Karen can't even be in the same, like, proverbial room as AJ. And also, that would be interesting. I love that alliance. But it's not going to happen, okay? There's a lot of interesting stuff happening. It's not happening. It's not boring. It's certainly explosive. And I'm having fun. But, like, how can I not have fun? Because look how much fun we have, right?
Yeah.
Like,
No, this has been great.
KO Lynn, KO Chick, the White Lotus thing. What a great time we have together. So with
I
all
love
of
this.
my recap bitches and on the feedback show, I'm just really loving the experience. Like, I'm really enjoying the way I'm covering the show now. And that might feed into it, but I'm having a good time. So
Well, and I think as well, yeah, like sometimes when we hold up a magnifying glass to these things the way that they do, where it's less so about the experience of like just watching it in and out of your ear, an hour gone. You know, there are some things that hold up to more scrutiny, and there are other things that are like, this is just really fun to talk about. And I'm just having a lot of fun watching and talking about the season. To your point, it has never been boring to me, and that always makes for something to podcast about. So, I mean, I think as well, I would imagine some people's experiences have hopefully been enriched as well by these episodic podcasts of like, especially with some of these cockamamie votes, really stopping down, being like, how did this happen and why did this happen? Rather than, I mean, maybe this was the first week, I think, where maybe you could have done the all-in.
No. I talked an hour every day at least. I'm having a great time. This is way better. Everything has needed the discussion it has had. It's been a great time. So yeah, thanks, Mike. This has been wonderful.
Yeah.
And also then I get to clarify immediately the next day. And then tomorrow I'll do the same thing about whatever mistakes I made today. And we did a bit of a feedback show today because we're like looking ahead and looking at what people think, even though only one episode of the week is aired for us, but it was good. This was fun.
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see once they drop their buffs. Like, I do not think they're going to drop their personalities, which makes me very excited for the next 12 episodes.
Well, where can the people find what you're doing, Mike?
At a Mike Bloom type, we had Jessica Leese on the B&B last week. Survivor 48, dropping another episode tomorrow. Talk about another season where people are playing wildly and there's a lot of personal drama that's happening. I'm intrigued to see what's going on there. Amazing Race is the big thing. I'll plug that just started up. And so Jess and I are doing weekly recaps out on Thursdays, as well as I'm doing Exit Press for Parade. I don't know if you heard, Shannon, as much as you are missing, the twists that sometimes fill the airwaves of Australia and Survivor, The Amazing Race is doing a season of surprises where every episode they're bringing in some sort of element just for that episode that's going to shake up the game.
Oh my God. Australian Survivor is always a season of surprises, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, hopefully nothing in the realm of Australian Amazing Race, because I've not watched a lot, but I followed that Wikipedia chart that one season, and oh man,
The
it
COVID
seems
season?
incredible.
That was actually
Yeah.
wonderful. That was a great season. Not to spoil, but like I still follow the winners on Instagram. Incredible story. Genuinely, I loved it. I know that the bar was lower during COVID, but actually highly recommend. I love it. The COVID stuff was unfortunate, but I still freaking love that season. Anyway, that was probably my favorite season in ages. I'm a casual. I don't know. Okay. Well, we're way over time, but I am actually recording a little later this week with Caroline for the feedback show, so that will give people
Ooh.
time to listen. Exit interview will come with Noonan. Speaks for itself, probably. 48. We know globalsurvivor.com at Shannon Gates. I think that's it. What other mistakes did I make, Mike, that I have to clarify? Is that all right? Did I say that I looked up audit? I think it's fine. Did I already say that?
I think it was good. Yeah.
Okay, it was fine.
You're gonna have to check with Miles. Miles is the financial analyst. He can tell you whether you use the term audit correctly or not.
I Googled it. I think it's fine.
I think you're fine. You're good. You're good.
It's fine. It's fine.
Let them fill the ideas into your head. You don't need to create them on your own.
But I do, and that's my curse. It's just like my OCD of just like, but what did I get wrong? I did this with Ferris the other day. I introduced him wrong, and then now we're 20 minutes later. I was like, did I say Titan?
You call him Kirby? Oh, okay.
Did I? No. Thank you all. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. I will see you next time. I will correct all the things next time. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.